All right, so today we are diving into Indonesian politics.
Yes.
And we've got a ton of articles and analyses
Yeah.
from both Indonesian and international sources,
Uh-huh.
all looking at President Prabowo's new cabinet
Yes.
and the policy direction that he seems to be setting.
Right.
So what jumps out right away is the sheer size of this cabinet.
Yeah, it's massive.
109 members.
It's the biggest since 1966.
Really? Wow.
Yeah, it kind of underscores his call for a strong government.
A strong government?
But-
Strong cabinet, too?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely sparking some debate.
Yeah, I bet.
Yeah.
Some are viewing this massive cabinet as a necessary tool, I guess,
Yeah.
to achieve his pretty ambitious goals.
Uh-huh.
Others are worried about,
Yeah.
inefficiencies or even corruption.
Right, with so many moving parts, it's a lot.
Yeah, it's a lot to keep track of.
It is a fascinating balancing act, though.
Yeah.
This cabinet is packed with kind of a mix of people, familiar faces, and newcomers.
Okay.
The reappointment of Sri Mulyani Indrawati as the finance minister
Oh, interesting.
signals a degree of continuity,
Okay.
which could reassure investors.
Okay, so they're not completely overhauling everything.
Exactly.
Interesting.
Yeah, but then there's this glaring omission.
Yeah,
The PDIP, the biggest party in the parliament,
right,
is completely absent
right.
from the cabinet.
That's a powerful message.
It is.
What does that tell us?
Well, it could suggest that Prabowo is preparing for a potential showdown
Okay.
with a very strong opposition force.
Yeah.
And the PDIP is known for its focus on social welfare and
Right.
advocating for everyday Indonesians.
Okay.
So they could really be a major roadblock
Yeah.
for any of his policies,
I'm sure.
especially any that have significant economic implications.
Especially the economic ones.
Yeah, for sure.
Interesting. Okay, so we have this,
Yeah.
and speaking of these fascinating dynamics, right?
Right.
There's Nasdem,
Right.
a party that initially backed the opposition candidate,
Yes.
but then joined Prabowo's coalition.
Uh-huh.
They've been offered cabinet positions,
They have.
but they declined.
Yeah.
What is their strategy here?
Well, Nasdem's chairman, Surya Paloh,
Okay.
says they're prioritizing the politics of ideas
Okay,
over pragmatism.
interesting.
So by staying out of the cabinet,
Yeah.
they retain a degree of independence
Okay.
and can position themselves as this critical voice
Interesting.
within the coalition
Yeah.
and potentially influence policy from the outside.
I see. So almost like
Yeah.
they have more power outside than in.
Exactly.
Fascinating.
It's a very interesting approach.
That's so interesting.
Yeah.
So it's not just about who is in the cabinet.
Right.
It's who's OUT
And why?
and WHY they're out,
Exactly.
which is really...
It's like a political chess game.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, and understanding these relationships is key
Yeah,
to deciphering what's going to happen next.
for sure.
And speaking of what comes next,
Yes.
Prabowo has outlined some bold policy goals,
Okay.
especially when it comes to the economy.
All right.
He has set his sights on an 8% growth rate.
8%.
Yes.
Wow. That's a big jump.
It is a significant leap from recent years.
Yeah.
Very ambitious.
Yeah. Very ambitious.
Yeah.
And to get there, it looks like he's eyeing,
Yeah.
a mix of tourism development,
Uh-huh.
establishing what he calls food estates,
Right.
and even rolling out a nationwide free meal program
Yes.
for school children.
For school children.
Wow.
It's a huge undertaking.
Yeah.
We're talking about providing meals
Yeah.
for 83 million children.
That's a lot of kids.
It is. It is a lot of kids.
Wow.
But it's strategically linked
Okay.
to his plans for bolstering domestic production
Right.
of things like chicken, eggs, and milk.
I see. So it's not just about feeding kids.
No.
It's about stimulating
Right.
local industries and agriculture.
Exactly. It could have this ripple effect
Right.
impacting farmers,
Okay.
food processing, the entire supply chain.
That's a bold move.
It is.
You could reshape, the
Face-
entire agricultural landscape there.
It really could.
Wow.
It's a very ambitious program.
Yeah, but as with any grand plan, right?
Of course.
There are bound to be hurdles.
Yeah.
And some analysts are raising concerns about Indonesia's history of bureaucratic red tape
Yes.
and rigid regulations
Yeah.
that can stifle foreign investment.
Right.
Could this hinder Prabowo's?
It's a valid concern.
Yeah.
It could definitely hinder.
Yeah.
Especially these large-scale projects.
Right.
Yeah.
And let's not forget the PDIP, right?
Yeah.
Waiting in the wings.
Potentially.
Potentially to challenge
Yeah.
any policies that don't align with their social welfare agenda.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
This is shaping up to be a real tightrope walk.
It is.
He's got to maintain stability within his coalition
Right.
while navigating this potentially powerful opposition. And on top of all that, there's Indonesia's position on the world stage,
Right.
which adds another layer of complexity.
Exactly. That's where things get really interesting.
Yeah.
We're seeing a much more proactive approach to foreign affairs under Prabowo.
Interesting.
His first trip as president includes visits to both China and the U.S., signaling a very careful balancing act.
So playing both sides.
Yeah, kinda.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's classic free and active foreign policy in action.
Free and active. Okay.
As the articles describe it.
Yep.
No formal alliances, but a focus on cultivating positive relations with all the major players.
Got it.
But how will this play out
in
a region as dynamic and volatile as Southeast Asia?
That's a great question. Yeah. And then the South China Sea issue adds another layer of complexity, right?
Absolutely.
I mean, Indonesia has had to drive out Chinese Coast Guard vessels
multiple times
recently to assert its sovereignty in those disputed waters.
It's a very delicate situation.
So maintaining economic ties with China while standing firm on territorial integrity.
Yes. It's a tightrope walk for sure.
That is a tightrope walk.
It is.
And how Prabowo navigates this will be heavily influenced by his cabinet choices.
Of course.
Particularly for the Ministry of Defense.
Absolutely.
So who did he choose?
He appointed Jafri Shamsodin as defense minister, a figure known for his deep understanding of the region's security landscape.
So a good choice, it sounds like.
Yes, but he is inheriting a significant challenge.
What's that?
Modernizing Indonesia's military. Which is widely seen as outdated.
Even with the recent increases in spending?
Yes. Despite recent increases in defense spending, it still needs work.
And that modernization is crucial.
It is.
Especially given the increasing assertiveness of China in the region.
Absolutely. And then you've got the ASEAN Security Pact between Australia, the UK, and the US. To consider.
How does that factor into their strategy?
That's the question. Some sources are suggesting that Indonesia is viewing AUKUS with a degree of caution. There are concerns about it potentially fueling an arms race in the region.
As nobody wants.
And further complicating the geopolitical situation.
And it's already complicated enough as is.
It really is.
So that's definitely something they're watching closely.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So to recap, Prabowo is facing a multifaceted challenge.
He is.
He's got this massive cabinet, a potentially very powerful opposition party. Ambitious domestic policies to implement, and a delicate foreign policy tightrope to walk.
Absolutely.
Especially when it comes to the South China Sea. And just the broader regional dynamics.
Exactly.
This is going to be interesting to watch.
It is.
Yeah. So what's fascinating to me is how his strong government approach is going to play out in all this. Will it bring greater stability and progress? Or is it going to create internal friction that hinders his agenda?
It's hard to say. Only time will tell.
Only time will tell. All right. Well, we're going to have to leave it there for now. But we will be back to continue this deep dive into Indonesian politics.
Sounds good.
So stay tuned.
All right. And we shouldn't overlook Indonesia's decision to join BRICS.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
A group that's often seen as this counterbalance to those Western-led institutions.
So that's a big deal.
It is. It signals their intention to kind of diversify its partnerships and maybe even explore alternative economic and political models.
Right.
But it does raise the question of how this move will be perceived by countries like the U.S.
Right, especially with all the...
Especially with China.
Yeah, exactly. It seems like Indonesia is walking this diplomatic tightrope, aiming to maintain its non-aligned stance, but also asserting its interests within this rapidly shifting global order.
Yeah, for sure.
And this balancing act extends beyond just economics and politics. It also includes these cultural and religious dimensions.
Interesting. So how so?
Well, the articles highlight the appointment of Anies Mata, the chairman of the Gelora Party, as one of the deputy foreign ministers. And he's specifically focused on relations with the Islamic world.
So that's significant.
It is. Mata is well known for his strong connections.
Yeah. Within Islamic circles and his understanding of the Muslim world.
Okay.
So this suggests that Prabowo is prioritizing those ties.
With Islamic nations.
Exactly. Right. Which could have implications for Indonesia's role in the OIC.
The Organization of Islamic Cooperation.
Yes. And its efforts to address, you know, sensitive issues like the Palestinian conflict.
Oh, okay. Right.
Mata has been very vocal about needing a more active Indonesian foreign policy.
In the Islamic world.
Within the Islamic world, yeah.
So how will this all play out?
Well, that's the question, right?
Yeah.
It'll be really interesting to see how Mata's appointment shapes Indonesia's approach to these delicate issues.
Right.
Will he advocate for a more assertive stance? Yeah. Or will he try to maintain a balance between all these different interests within the Islamic world?
It's a tough spot to be in.
It is.
Yeah, and then how does that all tie into Prabowo's?
Right, exactly.
For overall foreign policy objectives.
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack there.
A lot to unpack, a lot going on.
Absolutely.
So Indonesia's foreign policy under Prabowo is developing into...
It's this complex and multi-layered endeavor.
It sounds like it.
It is. He's not afraid to engage with a wide range of actors, from China and Russia to the U.S. and the Islamic world.
Yeah, all over the place.
Yeah, it's really fascinating.
Yeah, so all of this is happening against the backdrop of his ambitious domestic agenda.
Exactly.
Right, the free meal program, the tourism initiatives, the food estates.
Right.
All of this requires a lot of investment and coordination.
And not to mention the potential obstacles like bureaucratic inefficiency and corruption, which are highlighted in several of the articles.
So those are still problems.
Yes.
Prabowo needs to make sure
he does
that his strong government approach doesn't backfire.
Doesn't create more roadblocks.
Yeah, exactly. So it seems like he's banking on the sheer size of this cabinet. To address all these challenges.
With each minister and deputy minister focusing on a specific area. But will this lead to effective implementation?
That's a good question.
Or will it result in a lack of coordination and maybe even conflicting priorities?
A lot of people to wrangle.
It is. It is. Achieving that balance is going to be key.
Yeah. And, you know, these articles also touch on the potential friction between Prabowo's government and the PDIP, especially when it comes to economic policy.
Yes, the PDIP...
Officially.
Yes, the Indonesian Democratic Party of Struggle has this history of advocating for the poor and marginalized. So they might challenge...
Or any policies they see as favoring the wealthy. Or big businesses. And this is where the absence of PDIT members from the cabinet could be a factor.
A big factor.
Yeah, without a direct voice in the government.
They could be more likely to oppose...
They might use their power in parliament to really oppose his agenda.
And they have the numbers to do that.
They do. They're the largest party in parliament, so they could block legislation.
Wow.
Or even initiate investigations.
So, that could lead to a contentious relationship.
Potentially,
between the branches of government.
It's possible.
Yeah.
Prabowo's going to have to carefully consider the political ramifications and find ways to address those concerns.
Even though they're not formally part of his government.
Exactly. It's a reminder that Indonesian politics is complex. It's all these alliances, compromises,
and power struggles.
And Prabowo is right in the middle of it.
Right in the middle of it all.
Yeah. And this is particularly evident in his handling of the South China Sea issue.
The articles mention that Indonesian maritime authorities had to drive out a Chinese Coast Guard vessel
again
multiple times just this week.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a clear signal.
So he's not backing down.
He's not backing down
at all
from asserting Indonesia's sovereignty.
But how can he reconcile that with
a balancing act?
Yeah.
It requires this nuanced understanding of the economic and security implications.
Right, because they can't afford to alienate China.
No, they're a crucial trading partner and investor.
Right, but at the same time.
Right, but at the same time.
They have to protect their territory.
They have to protect their maritime territory and resources.
Right.
So the appointment of Joffrey Shamsuddin suggests he's taking this threat seriously. He's a seasoned military figure with experience in dealing with regional security challenges, and he's already signaled a willingness to increase military cooperation with China.
Even with all this tension?
Even amidst the tension.
Wow.
So it seems like Prabowo pursuing a two-pronged approach, strengthening Indonesia's defenses, but also keeping those lines of communication open.
Okay, so strength but dialogue.
Exactly.
Okay.
But modernizing their military is a long-term project.
It is. It is.
It needs a lot of investment.
Right, and despite the increase in spending...
their
forces are still considered outdated.
They're still considered outdated compared to some of their neighbors.
So that puts Prabowo in a difficult spot.
It does.
Yeah.
He needs to project strength to deter potential aggression.
Right.
But he's also working within these constraints of a limited budget and this complex geopolitical landscape.
A lot.
It is. It is.
Yep.
And then there's the wild card of AUKUS.
Right, right.
How does Indonesia view this?
Yeah.
What does it mean for their security strategy?
Yeah, good question.
The articles suggest they're approaching it cautiously.
Okay.
There's concern that it could fuel an arms race.
Right, yeah.
And escalate tensions with China.
Which they don't want.
Exactly. Yeah. Indonesia has always been wary of formal alliances.
Right.
They prefer to stay non-aligned.
Right. AUKUS could disrupt that.
It could. It could force them to choose sides.
Yeah, and they don't want to do that.
Exactly.
So it's a dilemma.
It is. It is.
That Prabowo will have to navigate carefully.
He'll have to assess the potential benefits and risks and figure out how to best protect Indonesia's interests in this ever-changing security environment.
Right. Okay, and these articles also highlight UNCLS and the archipelago concept.
Yes. UNCLS is the UN Convention on the Law of the Sea.
Okay.
It's this treaty that governs the use of the world's oceans and seas.
Okay.
It sets the rules for navigation, resource exploitation, and maritime boundaries.
Got it. Got it.
And the archipelago concept is a principle within UNCLS that recognizes the unique geography of archipelagic states like Indonesia.
Okay.
It allows them to claim sovereignty over the waters within their outermost islands, connecting them as a single unit,
rather than
treating each island as separate.
Okay.
So this is crucial for Indonesia because it ensures control over those vital shipping lanes and all those marine resources.
Okay.
Without it, Indonesia's territorial waters would be fragmented, making it much harder to enforce their sovereignty and manage those resources.
Okay, so it's all about geography.
It is. It really shapes a nation's foreign policy priorities.
And for Indonesia.
Protecting those maritime interests is absolutely paramount.
Yeah, right.
And this is where Prabowo's strong government approach
could come into play.
By bolstering Indonesia's defenses, strengthening their diplomacy, and actively engaging in those international forums, he might be able to secure a more favorable position for Indonesia in the regional and global order.
Okay, but it's risky.
It is. It's a high-stakes game with both risks and reward.
Yeah, his decisions are going to have a lasting impact.
Will have a lasting impact on Indonesia's trajectory.
So we'll be watching very closely
to see how it all unfolds.
Yeah, this is going to be really interesting.
It is very dynamic.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, it really does feel like Indonesia is at this pivotal moment.
It does.
Both domestically and on the world stage.
Yeah, Prabowo's approach is a gamble.
It is.
And it'll be fascinating to see how it plays out.
Yeah.
And his cabinet selections really reflect that.
How so?
It's this mix of seasoned technocrats, loyal political allies, even a few wild cards in there.
Interesting.
It's like he's assembled this diverse team with all the tools to tackle those challenges ahead.
It's still that big question mark of the PDIP being absent.
The PDIP, they could really disrupt his plans.
Yeah, especially in Parliament.
Right. Yeah, it injects a lot of uncertainty.
For sure.
Will his policies be met with cooperation?
Yeah.
Will there be confrontation?
Right.
Can he bridge that gap?
Yeah.
Or will they be a thorn in his side?
A thorn in his side, yeah.
It's hard to say.
Some sources think the PDIP might collaborate. If his policies align with, their focus on social welfare.
Yeah, their focus
and economic equity.
Right, but it's a delicate dance.
It is.
Any misstep could trigger a major standoff.
Yeah, this is where his leadership would be tested.
This is where we see what he's made of.
Can he forge consensus?
Yeah.
Can he execute his vision?
Or will he get bogged down by all the internal divisions?
The external pressures.
The external pressures, yeah.
So we've talked about a lot.
We have.
This new cabinet.
A new cabinet.
Ambitious policy goal.
Ambitious goal.
Complex domestic political dynamics. The challenges of this geopolitical landscape.
Yeah, it paints a picture of Indonesia at a crossroads.
A crossroads. I like that.
Yeah, and for you, the listener, what's important to understand is that Indonesia's decisions
have these far-reaching implications. This is a nation with growing economic and strategic influence.
Right.
And their actions will have ripple effects.
Across the region.
Across the region and the world.
Yeah, Prabowo's vision.
It's a bold experiment.
It is.
The stakes are high.
They are.
Will he achieve his goals?
Yeah.
Can he maintain stability?
Right.
Can he navigate all these challenges?
Only time will tell.
Only time will tell.
This has been a fascinating deep dive into Indonesian politics.
A lot to think about.
There is a lot to think about.
Yeah.
So thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
And we'll see you next time.
See you later.